Welcome back. Let's continue our discussion now on the issue of the national minimum wage. I'm now being joined on the program by Nelson Ekujemi, who is a public affairs analyst as well as a civil society leader. Nelson, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, the president has decided to stay action now on any pronouncement at all on the national minimum wage that he wants to consult with the governors and, of course, the private sector. He did meet with the governors and what is coming out of that meeting is that the governors are saying that, look, they would want to negotiate their own minimum wage. They wouldn't want a national minimum wage. And I'm just wondering, where do we go from here?
Honestly, I'm as bewildered as any other Nigerian could be. Because actually, as at this moment, the issue of the national minimum wage has become a national security matter. And you can see it from the actions of Mr. President that he's still consulting because the national minimum wage goes beyond the economic matters. It also has security undertone. And that is why Mr. President has taken it upon himself to discuss further with the governors as well as the organized private sector, knowing fully well that whatever decision that is arrived at has a reverberating effect on the totality of the Nigerian, geographical space. So I don't know because there have been different school of thought that we don't need to have a minimum.
But what do you make of the governor's position?
Well, the governors have been realistic because I listened to the governors, and if you look at the revenue that accrue to the states, realistically speaking, you know that it is easier for the camel, for the camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for some states to pay. Don't forget, this is 2024. The 2019 national minimum wage is still being, breached than, being complied with. So the truth of the matter is that if the national minimum wage is arrived at based on the prevailing template that, the tripartite committee recommended, you can be rest assured that we'll be back to the pre-2019 scenario where governors didn't refuse to sign and wait till date, they are not complying. And for me, there's no reason.
But then it means we would not be talking about a national minimum wage. And so the National Assembly should even not be legislating on it. And there have been arguments that, look, should even the issue of wage be in the exclusive list?
Absolutely. Because of the circumstances around this wage discussion, a lot of school of thought have come out. Somebody even told us that during the regional system of government, that some regions were even paying than the federals, that there's no reason having a national minimum wage. Let people pay or let people negotiate their wages according to their regions or according to their states. So if we are going that route, it means there will be we would rather have a state minimum wage than a national minimum wage. Then the federal government can decide, to negotiate with the federal workers as well under the labor unions and make a law with regard through the National Assembly. But we all know that presently, the issue of wages on the exclusive, maybe the National Assembly is going to sit down and amend that law to allow for the issue of minimum wage to fall under maybe exclusive and should fall under the concurrent list where the federal and the states can legislate. But you all know that where there's a conflict, the federal law takes precedence. So it's a tough one. I don't pity those at the end of our affairs at this point in time, and looking at what they are going through in order to ensure that the ship of the Nigerian state keeps sailing.
But then when you look at the argument of the governors, I mean, you begin to ask yourself, isn't this argument actually tenable? Because states are actually not equal. Their revenue is not equal. They don't earn the same. In fact, even the revenue that comes from the federation account is not equal. Some states get more than others, and that some states are poorer than others. So why then would you want every state to pay the same amount of money to their workers? And then their argument also is that, look, standard of living actually varies from state to state. The cost of living, you don't have a centralized cost of living, so to speak. That, things are cheaper in some states while they're quite expensive in some other states. So why then should you have a parity in salaries?
Well, I think looking at the templates arrived at by the tripartite committee, maybe that committee needs to be recalled Because I recognize that some states said, from what we saw in the public
Some
space,
states have said that they would not be able to even pay 60,000.
yes, maybe we need to go back there and peg because we are talking about minimum. We are not talking about maximum now. So there's nothing wrong if we say the minimum is 40,000 naira. If we look across board that every state can pay 40,000, we say the minimum is 40,000 naira. If you can pay 1 million, that's your cup of tea. So we are talking about a minimum. So maybe the minimum figure we are looking at now is the cause of the friction, is the cause of the crisis. Maybe we need to go back and look at make a consensus.
A state is already paying 70 anyway.
Yes, a state is already paying, but how long can it sustain that 70,000? Because we know that the administration is winding down, and a lot of people have come out to say the Governor Godwin Obaseki, was creating problem for his successor. Don't forget, we have seen states where a governor who is exiting will recruit more people into the service, only for the new man to come and be faced with industrial, disharmony, because he is claiming that the workforce, that the revenue of the state cannot take care of the workforce, that there is no need, that some of those workers were appointed or were given appointment based on political consideration rather than the reality of what the state actually needs. So in this case, I think the president, as well as in view of his consultation, my own suggestion would be that we should go back and look at what the states, proposed, and take the minimum from the states as our minimum wage. Then we allow the various states to go and negotiate with their workers and arrive at whatever will be their minimum. Then we'll peg our minimum there, because we are looking at national minimum wage. We are not talking about national maximum wage. So if we say the minimum is 40,000 or the minimum is 20,000 is 35,000, then we'll know the workers in those states can now bargain or negotiate with their government as well as the State House of Assembly to arrive at whatever minimum they want to arrive and what will be payable, to the workers. Because I know that the wages will be calculated based on certain parameters. So those parameters can be worked on.
Lastly now, this is certainly not going to be an easy one to deal with. I mean, especially when you look at what we have now, Labour insisting on 250, the governor saying they're not able to pay 60, and then they're asking that they be allowed to negotiate on their own.
Even as at that, I think we should be cautious to recognize that when we are talking about this wage, we must take the organized private sector into consideration. They are a very critical sector, because these are the people that employs over 70% of our workforce.
And that is true.
So we should stop concentrating on how much is government offering. Are we because are we saying when we sign into law a national minimum wage, it doesn't affect the private sector? Absolutely not. Any business enterprise operating within the Federal Republic of Nigeria will be binded by that law. So I think it is important for us to take the discussion outside of government and even look at the private sector. What can they offer? How are we ensuring that the private sector can survive better than they are grappling with presently with all the challenges? So it is not enough for us to be looking at how much is the state getting from allocation. How about the man who has set up a business and who is going through a lot to be able to keep those workers, to make them earn a living wage? So the organized private sector is one critical angle that I will implore us all to look at what becomes of their fortune if we legislate based on our primary focus on the federal and the state government. That is a misplacement of priority, if you ask me.
Nelson Kujimi, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, that's how much we can take on the program this week. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.